Our freedom depends on the truth, and truth is hard-earned. It's rare to find ourselves in a position when making decisions that we have all the information. This is intensified with the vast amount of variety we have at our disposal. When it comes to decisions that impact on our lives, and we are facing the long game, how do we know we're headed in the right direction? I hope you enjoyed this podcast. This one was a really interesting one. I want to talk about fairness, things being fair. Are things fair or are they not fair? Do we have a reason to believe that things are fair or unfair? What do we do when we see things as being fair or unfair? And how does that factor into the decisions and the choices that we make, and how we make our decisions and how we make our choices? You will have no doubt not heard, because you hear that Brazil has elected a new president. And the new president of Brazil is an extreme right-wing maniac and wants to bring all kinds of very conservative reforms to that country. And it's made world news headlines. People are very worried and very skeptical about this man because of his policies. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about South African politics. So, I'm not a politician, and I was seriously contemplating how politics can actually be a career. It's quite an interesting thing when you look at what politicians do. How do you choose this as your career? How do you prepare yourself for politics in the South African system? Now, my perception is the way that I look at it is that our political system and our government was hijacked, and a person who was not elected came into power and stayed in power. And he had a very specific agenda that he was pursuing. He was saying that there are people who have a lot and there are people who have none. And we must take from those who have a lot and we must give it to those who have none. It's not fair. The system is not fair. The way that the country, the way that South Africa was run poorly, and we need to level the playing field so that everything is fair and that everybody has a chance and that everybody has an opportunity. Now, obviously, if you're sitting with a lot, you don't want to have your lot taken away from you. And if you're sitting with nothing, it becomes a case of, that'll be really cool. That'll be great. You know, I could use some help. I could use some free stuff. And I had a little bit of a discussion about this and a little bit of a think about this, because I was thinking, is this a specific kind of mindset part of evolutionary survival? That we have it inside of ourselves to look at a system and to say this is unfair the way that this system is, and we must take from those who have and give to those who don't have. Because what seems to happen is politicians seem to tap into that part of the human psyche and use it to political advantage. Obviously, as we've seen, is what has happened in our political system, that was a ruse that this person used to plunder the state resources and to undermine the system. And as far as I can understand it, and I know this politics is a very touchy subject, as far as I can understand it, is a large percentage of the thinking is if there are so few who have so much and there are so many who have nothing, let's tear the whole system down. And then everybody will be on the same level, and then we can build it up again. Which unfortunately is an insane way of looking at things, and I'll talk about a little bit why I say that. So if we bring it back just to my personal, I'll just put this forward now. My personal reason why I don't think that is a really good idea is because it's much harder to create something that's not there than to work in a system that is there to create something. If you look at what has happened in the East, which is very, very prevalent, is they copy. They have no copyright laws. If you can steal the information and you can hijack it and you can build it, then you can open up a shop and sell it and nobody's going to say anything. The same doesn't apply in America. Like with Apple, you can go and buy absolute copies at Apple stores that are fake, completely fake. Whereas in the US and in the Western world, that wouldn't be allowed. So I had an interesting look at startup businesses that have been valued at more than $1 billion. 131 come from China, 76 come from the US. Now, it used to be the other way around, where the US had the upper hand, and now, I mean, who has the upper hand? Does it have something to do with population? But it's just something interesting to look at and to think about. So in an office environment, I've seen this, I've experienced it. I'd like to think that I haven't been part of it, but maybe I have, where you have two people and the one person is looking at what the other person is doing and looking at what they're doing and then wondering, why is this person getting more than me? Why is this person benefiting more than me? My experience with that is the lady who manages my finances and see what happens in my business is earning a salary. But she's seeing all the figures and the numbers that are coming through my business, and I get a feeling from her like, you're paying me this little bit and I see all of this stuff going on. Yeah, she doesn't realize the circumstances involved in that. So it's like I evaluate my input and I evaluate your input, and I'm wondering, why do I get less than you do? That's a normal thing. I know it's a very big thing here in South Africa, that there's almost like an expectation that because you have stuff that you should be giving it to people who don't have stuff. I see it all the time. Maybe there's something wrong with the way that I'm looking at things, but it's definitely something that I'm aware of. And again, the question that I'm asking is, this evaluation process, is it part of our psyche, and is it something that is being abused and misused by people? Is it there? Why do we evaluate and look at things this way? Is it an evolutionary survival mechanism? So that's kind of along the foundations of what I want to talk about. There is a theory called game theory. And in game theory, there's two types of games that you play. There's a finite game and an infinite game. And a finite game is something like chess. You know who the players are, their known capacity. You know all the pieces on the board. You can even say checkers or snakes and ladders or whatever, 30 seconds, maybe not 30 seconds. But a game with a finite set of rules and a finite outcome, and it's a known quantity, it's stable. So cricket is an excellent example of a finite game. You have a 5-day test series. You know that for the next 5 days you'll be able to sit in front of the TV and sleep with that talking going on in the background. The rules are established. The techniques are established. It's a known quantity. You can say that there's a similar way of approaching things from a business perspective. Which is why I mentioned startups, is if you start a business with the aim of selling it, that is a finite game that you're playing there. You create something, put a lot of effort in, but you are of the mindset that in 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, I'm going to sell this and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. The aim of the exercise is to profit from the sale of this business. So I'll put what I need to into it to have that specific outcome. An interesting example of where the finite game can go wrong is when you look at the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War, to the best of my recollection, was a fight against communism and the injustices that were going on over there. And America went into the Vietnam War with the idea that we want to win. We're going to go in there, we're going to kick some ass, we're going to get things sorted out, and it's going to be done. But what happened is they went into an infinite system where it wasn't defined. The people that they were going to war against were fighting for their lives, for their very survival. You know, they weren't about to, all right, let's play this game of soldiers and then there'll be a winner, and, you know, whoever the winner is gets to decide what happens. An infinite game is a game where there's no known outcome or no defined outcome. And there's no defined players. An example of this is the Cold War between the capitalists and the communists. For lack of a better way of putting it, America and the US, the Cold War. Neither side was looking for the quick victory. It was a case of we're in this game, but we're in for the long haul, and we're in for the long change to see if we can make this work. Now, the circumstances that an infinite game can end, so there's no winners and losers in an infinite game. The only way that an infinite game can come to an end is that one of the players can drop out. One of the players can run out of resources. But I don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to do things this way anymore. So we're going to drop out of this race, this competition. Their system and their infrastructures are so bad and so poor that they run out of resources to continue. Or the will to play. And an example of that is where Afghanistan has always been a very important and significant battleground. I have a conspiracy theory, and it's a pure conspiracy theory. It's not based on any fact, but I think it's because of all the opium poppies that they grow. And Russia occupied Afghanistan. And America didn't like the idea that Russia had occupied Afghanistan, in line with my conspiracy theory, because then Russia would be getting all the opium trade and they wouldn't be getting any of the opium trade. So they approached the war in Afghanistan from the perspective of, we're going up against these guys and we're going to get these guys out. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, we're going to wear them down. We're going to wear them down until they give up or they lose, but we're going to keep going until one of us runs out of resources or the will to do this anymore. And as fate would have it, the Russians pulled out. They left all their military hardware and all of those kind of things behind. So their finite game, the Americans' finite game, was to eject Russia from Afghanistan. Their infinite game was to make it so expensive and so costly and so difficult that it would drain them of resources, so that they would just give up the fight and leave. The second part of this argument is, when going into these kind of conflicts and when playing these kind of goals, how do you make your objectives clear? And how do you establish yourself as trustworthy in these kind of situations? How do you win, whether it be popular opinion, public opinion, how do you win the people over? Now, if you look at situations like Iraq And if you look at situations like Syria, these kind of conflicts that are happening in the Middle East, all that we've seen is the devastation that war has caused. People getting killed, people getting blown up, airplanes being flown into towers, cultures being destroyed, terrorist organizations forming tremendous immigration into Europe, lot of poverty. And when we look at America and what they've done, we see something that we don't understand and that we don't know, that it's an unpredictable enemy, that they will shoot you and blow you up with a drone from far away, and you will not know if it is coming or if it is not coming. The whole thing is very uncertain. They don't know what they're doing, and they don't know the direction that they're going in. The predictable element is, it's so difficult when you know, I'm talking about this stuff, something about war, it's so terrible, and there just seems straight off the bat that it's a mug's game, you know, it can't work, it's insane. But if you want to look at a situation where there is an element of predictability, is, are you taking wounded soldiers into your hospitals? Are you treating them? Are you helping them get better? Are you giving them the medical care that they need? Are you helping them to re-establish themselves and to get healthy and to get better? So there was a film called Heartbreak Ridge? Very, very, very good movie, where a Mormon volunteered to fight in the Second World War, but he refused to wield a gun. It's a phenomenal film. And he had volunteered, and he was still viciously bullied by his colleagues in the army, and he refused on the principle that he wanted to serve his country and he wanted to be part of the effort, part of the war effort to protect his country, but he didn't want to shoot or kill anybody. So he went through his basics. They tried to drum him out, and they tried to drill him out, and they tried to press him out. And eventually he ended up in the medics, carrying people off the battlefield and taking them into hospital. Now, the way that the movie was set up, and even the way that I think about it, that's a hero. There is somebody who, against all the odds and against all the difficulty and against all the challenges, firstly stands for his principles. I want to serve my country, but I will not kill anybody. And then finding a place where he can do that. Now, the interesting thing was that, and it's a true story, the people that he pulled off the battlefield and put in the hospital were on both sides. So he didn't differentiate whether they were Americans or whether they were, I think they were fighting in Japan or Japanese. He would take anybody who he found. And what was happening between the base where he was, there was a whole extraction that took place of this hilltop. He was the last guy left on top of the hill, pulling wounded soldiers off the battlefield, and the Japanese were advancing, shooting people, and he was dodging bullets throughout the night, pulling people off the battlefield. And he climbed down this 200-300 meter rope ladder, carrying people down and up and down and up and down. It's a whole bunch of people that he saved. And between the point where he was dropping people off in the hospital, the GIs were killing the Japanese and leaving them and, not looking after them. Some of them got to the hospital, some of them didn't get to the hospital. All the Americans got to the hospital. So what was his motivation and what was the game that he was playing? There's your hero. There's a person, somebody that I look up to. Now, in the film A Beautiful Mind, Russell Nash is the star of that film, is the mathematician, and he comes up with the thing, and I think it was the thing that won him the the Nobel Prize for Economics. I'm not 100% sure. He came up with a thing called the Nash equilibrium. And the Nash equilibrium says an individual who does what's best for himself and the group is the one who succeeds. Because you have an individual who will do what is best for the group and not what is best for himself. And you will have an individual who will do what is best for himself and not for the group. And the person who does what is in the interests of his community and what is in his own interests is the one who is going to succeed. We're faced with so many options in our society today. If you want to go buy a pair of headphones, a set of headphones, the amount of options that you have, you got Dr. Dre beats, you've got 10 different options of beats, Skull Candy, JBLs, you name it. We are absolutely overloaded with choice. And when faced with making decisions, any decision, whether we're talking about purchasing something or making a decision about the trajectory that our life is going to go in, we are never going to have all the information to a satisfactory point where we will be able to make decisions without anxiety. Everybody knows about buyer's remorse. I just bought a set of Bluetooth earphones. I wish I could take them back and go buy another pair. And they're great, there's nothing wrong with them. You know, use them for the gym. Now I want a pair of waterproof ones. You know, so I can go in the pool with them. We'll never be able to have enough information to relieve that anxiety of making choices. And the higher the stakes and the more the risk, the more the anxiety. It really does come down to a point of having to let go and trust outcomes. Coming back a little bit to what I was talking about when we talk about equality and redistribution, whether things are fair or whether things are not fair, whether pulling down the system is a good thing, you know, so that we can all at least start from the same level where we all have nothing and, you know, build ourselves up again. Unfortunately, what is going to happen is exactly the same thing is going to happen again. I've spoken a little bit about the Pareto distribution. The Pareto distribution is that it's the square root. This is a little bit of a complicated formula, but the rule is that of a group of 100, 10% of that 100 will make more money than the combined 90%. I think it's 20. It's 20-80, not 90-10. 20-80. 20% of the population will make as much as the combined wealth of the 80. So if you pull the structure down, that doesn't change that law. Now that law plays across any, and this is the important thing to remember, any creative endeavor. Any creative endeavor. So I want to give you an example, and I would say that this person is somebody that I look up to, that I think is a phenomenal athlete, Wade van Niekerk. You all know who Wade van Niekerk is. He's a South African sprinter. Wade van Niekerk is from Kraaifontein in Cape Town, which is more commonly referred to as Kraaifontein. In 2016, he set the world record and the Olympic record for the 400 meters, a record that had been in place for 17 years. In 2017, he set the world record for the 300 meters, another record that had been in place for 17 years. In 2015, in the World Athletics Championships, 400 meters, he won gold. In the 2017 World Championships, he defended his gold medal in the 400 meters and won silver in the 200 meters. He is the first and only person in the world to run the 100 meters under 10 seconds, to run the 200 meters under 20 seconds, to run the 300 meters under 31 seconds, and to run the 400 meters under 44 seconds. The first and only person who's able to do that. How do we redistribute Wade van Kerk's abilities? How do we deal with that 20% of people? So classical music composers, of 100 classical music composers, 20 of those classical music composers, I'm talking about the greats, Bach, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff, all of these guys. 20% of these guys will get the same amount of airplay as the other 80. Of those 20% of them will be more successful than the other 20. I mentioned an example to this group some time ago with these podcasts that I'm recording. I wanted to see if this is true. So I had recorded, at the time, I think I had recorded 18 podcasts. I wanted to see how many of those podcasts were being listened to. 20% of those podcasts were being listened to more than the other 80% of those podcasts. This is one of the laws of the universe. So you can take from the obscenely wealthy and give to the desperately poor. I don't know if it's going to change that ratio, if it's going to change that dynamic. What then becomes the solution to that problem? Now, where the confusion comes in about whether things are fair and whether things are unfair and whether things are just and whether things are unjust, and this is quite an important thing. It comes down to confusion around three things: power, competence, and authority. These three things get confused because the reason why the 20% have the 20% is not because they are more powerful or because they have more authority or because they are more dominant. It's because they are more competent. It's the way that things... If you look at... They've done an experiment with peas in pea pods. 20% of the peas that are produced in a segment of the pea population compared to the other 80%. Peas, of all things. You go into the forest and you look at trees. 20% of the trees get the sunlight. It's one of the laws that are doing well. One of the laws that are laws. Every person who starts some kind of creative endeavors, every person who tries to do something will be faced with the option, and if we talk about a business situation, if a person starts doing well and starts making money in their business, they can either employ more people, which is going to take them back to the start of their business. Because when you've got more people, you've got more mouths to feed. You've got more people that are dependent on you. And you've just moved away from that like borderline thing in your business as well. So either you employ more people or you start to innovate. And you start to look at ways of doing things differently and creatively to move forward. So if a guy creates the wheel and is able to grind his corn and produce more maize in his community, and nobody else has come up with that idea, is either he then employs more people or figures out a way to improve his processes. Somehow, I don't know how. Now, an interesting phenomena takes place, and I actually think that this is true. I look at it very much from a surrendered perspective. I try to be as surrendered as I possibly can. So when I pay tax, I pay the tax. I try to I pay it and I let go. People don't necessarily mind inequality as long as the systems aren't corrupt and the systems are fair. If we know that we all have an equal chance, and nobody's stealing or being a criminal or subverting the system or bribing and corrupting, and we all have a chance. Where this one is, all he has to do is pay the police. And so why should I obey the law? The system is not fair. Why should I do that? So inequality is not necessarily the problem. Definitely inequality of opportunity. I would say definitely. If we can create more opportunities for people to take advantage of, to take responsibility to improve themselves, the better. Now, if you look at the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. We all are familiar with the Round Table. The Round Table means that nobody sits at the head of the table. Everybody is equal at the table. And the quest of King Arthur's knights was to find the Holy Grail. That was what their quest was. And each knight had to take his own path. And the story goes is that each knight went into the forest where he saw that it was darkest on his quest. The New Age, everybody knows the New Age people. New Age spiritualists kind of thing. The Christians and the Muslims and the New Age and the Buddhists, and does everybody know what I'm talking about? The idea behind the New Age philosophy is that you must pursue your bliss. You must find out what your bliss is, and you must pursue your bliss. What Carl Jung said, which is unfortunately the reality that I've experienced. It would be very nice if we could pursue our bliss, and that's all that we needed to do. What Carl Jung said is that the thing that we fear the most is usually where our answers lie. The thing that we fear the most is usually where our answers lie. So there's two things here. Personal responsibility. What are you taking responsibility for? And what are you doing as your service? Because really, ultimately, the idea is to go out and confront the enemy and to win the gold, to slay the dragon, to win the gold and to take the gold back home. And then what? What is your purpose? What is your vision? What is your vision in life? So there's taking of responsibility. There's what I believe needs to be the foundation. What I perceive Dominic, what Dominic perceives as the key element in any successful society, for any society to be successful, and that any society can achieve, is honesty, is to be honest. No matter how it looks. This is a side note, and again I'm talking about politics, and it's so speculative and can be so one-sided. In the Western Cape, they've axed 8 members of parliament. They've just gotten rid of the mayor of Cape Town on accusations of corruption. Now, that was in the news this morning. I heard on the radio, on the news this morning. There's 2 ways of looking at it. Either the government in the Western Cape are just totally corrupt, or they don't care how it looks, but they're taking real steps to get rid of all the criminals. Doesn't matter what's happening. I believe honesty is the foundation of any successful society. Any successful community is based on honesty. And then, who is the hero in all of this? And I think the hero is the one who speaks the truth. In our Western society, the hero is the one who speaks the truth, who is unafraid of speaking the truth and the consequences associated with speaking the truth. It's an interesting dynamic, and I'm going to end with this. If you look at Facebook and you look at Google, two guys, maybe not Google, I got a bit confused there. I got Bill Gates, who's Microsoft. I got him confused with Google. If you look at Facebook was started by some young dude in his basement with a whole bunch of computers. And it's turned into this megalith that people are terrified of the power and the influence that this person wields over society and what it is that this person is doing with that influence. And all the secrets and the data that is mined. Did he start out? And is he where we think he is? Because this is the real challenge. Cliff in the office said something so fascinating. A few things that I agree with. Education should be free. Absolutely. I think it's undoubtedly. Medical care should be free. And he said data should be free because information is a basic human right. And that was really something that really I was like, that is so fascinating. Because all these guys do is they keep all this information, they don't share it with anybody. The wealth of information that Facebook and Google have, that they're not sharing with the universities and the social sciences, they're keeping it all for themselves for economic gain. Free data, free information, free communication. Freedom of communication is a right.